Now to tonight's special report, and following the closure of more WIN television newsrooms across Australia last month, there are growing concerns about the coverage of issues and events in smaller towns and communities right around the country. The Deputy Prime Minister is leading the way with a push for more investment in regional news services. Over the past decade, those services have been slowly declining. The Media Union estimates that on top of the thousands of jobs lost in the cities, at least 135 have disappeared at country newspapers. As well as shutting 5 newsrooms this year, WIN TV recently stopped producing bulletins in Tasmania, and Channel 9 moved production from the Northern Territory. There are now concerns councils and other authorities are no longer being scrutinised and local stories aren't being told. Carrington Clark has tonight's special report.
New Norfolk is a town of around 5,000 people, about 30 minutes drive from Hobart. It's the third oldest town in the country.
People in country areas have a voice and they have some fantastic stories. So who is the one to tell them? And that is why local newspapers and local radios have a very important place in the landscape today. As you know, in regional Tasmania.
After decades in the industry, journalist Roger Hanson was made redundant from the News Corp-owned Hobart newspaper, The Mercury, last year.
And how are you going for members?
He's now the editor of a local paper, the Derwent Valley Gazette. The paper was previously owned by News Corp before it was sold to a PR company.
There's a distinct separation between the publisher and the editorial content. There's no overlay on that. So the story is there to be told. We tell the story.
Philip Rowley gets all his news free, including listening to the radio.
I know I'm a bit of a cheapskate. I like saving money, and I went, well, hey, I don't have to pay for this, so why bother buying a newspaper? Oh, it says 15-kilometre gridlock.
Wow.
He and his wife Teresa no longer watch television but get a lot of information online, including from social media sites like The Vigilante News, a Tasmanian-focused Facebook site that posts local stories with a focus on crime. Philip is one of 90,000 people who follow the Facebook page in a state of about 500,000. Even still, he questions its accuracy.
The initial person that reports doesn't always have the facts. At times does come out, some of these stories, a day or two later, and totally 100% wrong.
Journalism academic Margaret Simons says a third of councils report no journalists attend their meetings.
And when you have what you might call citizen journalists or community groups moving into the area, they can obviously make a very valuable contribution to the amount of information, but they don't tend to provide systematic coverage of local government.
In the decade to 2016, the number of television reporter jobs in Australia fell by more than 5%, while the number of radio journalist jobs declined by more than 30%, and nearly 40% of print journalist jobs disappeared. And the pain hasn't stopped. The Media Union estimates that around 1,200 further positions have been lost since 2016.
The modern newspaper office. A small cosmos of arts, science, commerce.
There have been high-profile closures of entire newsrooms, and regional areas are often hardest hit.
I often say it's easier to find out what Donald Trump had for dinner last night than it is to find out what's going on up the street.
Former Tasmanian Premier David Bartlett says the dwindling number of journalists threatens the health of democracy.
At my time as Premier, there was a real peak of both professional media, if you like, and social media, the advent of social media, that created the perfect scrutiny storm. But what I see now is we're not seeing that level of investment in political journalism, and therefore it's the regions that miss out first on good government scrutiny.
I don't think many people my age would sit down actively and watch the news.
Even though 25-year-old Laura Redpath gets most of her news online through podcasts and social media, she's worried about the future of local media.
The media is the watchdog for politicians and also for corporations, so if you've got less stringent investigative journalism happening, I just think people are going to get bolder and there's going to be more stuff that won't be uncovered.
And that's particularly the case in regional and rural areas.
Just because they live out in the country, that doesn't mean their voice is less important. And so this is a fear that I have for the changing landscape of the news environment.
And unless a business model is found to work, that landscape looks increasingly dire. Carrington Clark, ABC News.